think I got it on. Um, Hi again. This time it's like 5 in the morning. Actually, it's 6 in the morning now. Um, yeah, probably should have thought a little further than this. Yeah, either way, my microphone on. Next thing you know, I might have another malfunction like yesterday. So, where do I go? Talking about yesterday, I was rewatching the stream this morning, and kind of wanted to talk more about um I guess this is something I learned along the process of me just doing what I was doing, which is like what I want to call it, self accountability. I don't know if I want to call it that, but it was addressing the issue that I had in 2019, which was I was very subservient. I was in a situation where I was very okay with being in the injured state that I was in. I have a video on this channel where it's just like me being like, or me where I'm really big, and I'm like kind of admitting to my problem. I say kind of. Some people would blame like there's an astrology, like if you have Cancer in the fifth house. Is it the fifth house? I don't know. Something about being passive aggressive, not being able to like fully say what you need to say, and or other people would associate my upbringing and how I grew up as a kid and kind of point to various factors in my life that led to me not being very vocal about stuff. Either way. So yesterday I talked about, no, was it yesterday or 2 days ago? Either way, I was just basically talking about how because I grew up in a household full of women, I, right, monkey see, monkey do, I've developed a very an effeminate way of existing. And I can't remember what I watched, but it was something where somebody suggested reading a book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. But when this person referenced it, he was referencing it more from a perspective of like kind of speaking on abandonment issues and how some of the formative years of children are very integral to like how they develop the perception of attention from parents and how they develop healthy associations with how they communicate with others and like relationships. But it's kind of very interesting how like depending on how they interact with the with at least in Mr. Nice Guy, I'm picking it apart and looking at it from a very different angle because in Mr. Nice Guy, it spells it out to you in a way where because your parents acted these specific ways around you, you developed a perception of this is how I must be in order to gain approval from my parents. But because it's so subconscional that it not subconscional, it just looks on the surface level, it looks okay to be this way. But in the book, it says that you develop negative traits. You become very secretive. You become avoidant. You're always trying to avoid conflict. You use your problem solutions aspects of a male. You start to use those in a way where kind of like because you're always bottling up your emotions and you're always solving other people's problems and you're never putting yourself first, like you develop this sort of nice guy syndrome. And in the book, this is why I'm picking it apart because in the book it's just describing why you as a male are failing. The way I'm kind of picking this apart is more like if this is just for the male side, what would this look like for both roles, male and female? And if the formative years are that important for a male and that would dictate like his level of happiness and his level of relationships, right? Like what would that look like towards kind of the female spectrum, the female side of things, right? If like, what are the effects that occur on her? I wonder if there's any books like that. Um, because my whole self journey of like moving forward with my life has involved me to understand my circumstance, like why I am the way I am, and how to improve. Like, I don't know, because the way I saw it, my whole life, I always grew up fat, so there was always this internal struggle with me, like, how do I solve this problem? And I've tried a lot of things. Like by the time I was 18, at least 20, I just remember constantly trying diets and constantly looking for more and more information to try to figure out how to like control this monster. Which kind of leads you into aspects of Alex Jones just because of the kind of guests that he invites on, and then whatever. That's a whole other side of things. I didn't solve that problem until 2019 and by then I was already very comfortable to the point where I think I was almost 450 pounds. No, not 450 pounds, like 300. I know I was fat enough that my arms were resting on my body. Like, because I remember one of my nieces verbalizing that to me, and yeah, that was quite a blow. But by that time, I was already skinny. So again, back to why I called this stream Mr. Nice versus Talk to Me Nice. Because I'm looking at this more from a developmental issue, because I always view things from, or at least I don't know why I'm subconsciously doing it, where I'm always viewing this whole scenario through the culture where that we're at. Like, how did we end up in the culture and the society that we're currently in? And kind of doing my best to reverse engineer it from that perspective. And kind of interesting. Like, I could tie it into an article that I remember where it said that minorities were promoted more violent videos than everyone else. And it does remind me of an instance where I was a after school teacher, or an after school assistant teacher. I don't know. I was doing tutoring. Um, Essentially, when I got to know some of these kids, and I would look at them, look at their phones, they were always constantly looking at like hella violent shit, like kids getting injured, like really bad accidents, like, gore, really gore level stuff. And if you would report these accounts, nothing would happen to them. And you know what I mean? Like, on the back end, somebody's making these decisions, but this was like 2014, so you know, were they manipulating people even back then? But then this gets into the issue of, well, how did men become the way they are now? And this whole thing with men being the way they are now isn't, you know what I mean? Like, just because you have a magical skin tone doesn't mean that you're absolved from these issues. These issues are like back to back to back repeated across any race. But there is a common thread amongst all of this: Western culture. And just like how I said, where when you're speaking, the air is what's used to transfer your voice to somebody else's ear. It's the same thing with the medium in this point is Western culture. Like, certain things were allowed within the community ether that allow for these sort of things to manifest themselves. Now, I'm not going to say any particular one thing that could do that. I'm just saying there's factors to this, because in the example of No More Mr. Nice Guy, the book, he describes that there's even one of these individuals, these guys who develop these really these internal issues of his relationship because of how his mother and father were both very smothering, very controlling. Like, right, his father told him, like, you're gonna buy this car, you're gonna work at my firm, you're gonna go to this church, and like, the mother was very smothering because she had no friends. Her way of, like, there was just problems, right? So these issues don't just manifest themselves in a violent home or in a very passive aggressive home. Like they, you know what I mean? Like there are a variety of things that you can turn the knob to and people will develop differently. And in this case, in my case, I grew up in a single mom home, and some of the negative traits that I developed, again, some people from astrology would be like, well, that's because your placement here in Cancer means that this and that. Like, I don't know, to some degree, I would say, like, so you're telling me if you understand the stars, would this dictate, like, does it, right, life path? Life path. Does it dictate my life path? But then there's life path numbers, and I don't know. I don't know. Everyone has a different journey, is what I'm saying. So some of the negative traits that I have, right, being very secretive, and secretive only in the way to the point where I just want to avoid conflict. So one of the ways that I was being secretive recently was because I had to edit videos and I had to, nobody told me to do this. Nobody told me to do the art. Nobody told me to do the music. Nobody told me to learn how to video edit in very specific ways. Nobody told me to do any of these things. I forced myself to do these things. I forced myself in a situation where I was like, these are the needs of the group. I want to meet them. How do I meet them? So, right, solution. What is my solution to this thing? I started learning all this. But because, like, I have to balance my own life, balance me learning this stuff, and then me actually doing this stuff. And then there's that, these are like deep rooted problems that I developed when, just school wise. It's something that I've learned that I just don't do school homework. I've never done my homework ever. But it's because of the way that it's a very specific like middle school issue where I was living in Mexico and I had done my first piece of Spanish homework, and because I was in middle school, my writing ability wasn't up to par to I don't know how to say this. Basically, in biology, wrote an essay, gave it to the teacher, and because my English was shit, like my Spanish was shit, I mean. So when I wrote it, it sounded like an elementary school kid wrote it, and she lambasted me over it. Like she dragged me through the calls, right? Like it was so bad that she did it in front of the class that the kids that did not like me, and that I remember, right? These kids were very mean to me, but that was the one time the kids that were very mean to me walked up to me and they were like, damn, dude, like, sorry. Like, even we think that was kind of too far because they knew I was from America and that was like my first year in like in a Spanish school. So it was kind of like, that really deeply affected me. I never realized it until like later when I started addressing these issues where I developed this knack where I do not like being told what to do. Like I'll do it my way. Like in high school, we were always given these essay prompts where, oh, write your topic sentence like this. These are your connector sentences. These are the places that you want to source your evidence. Instead of me, right, it was very structured. Like if you followed along with it, like you could write an essay, but I hated it. Like I did not want to be told how to do something that I would do it my way, and it would always involve conflict with teachers. And because I wanted to avoid conflict, etc., I was just like, you know what, I'm not going to do the homework. But you know, these are just issues that I've like addressed for myself. But if these were issues that I have for myself, I look at other people and just see this across the board, that it's like it wasn't just me who had these issues. There was a lot of people who shared the same, not experience, but I guess everyone would come to the same conclusion. So I don't know, very negative. That's why certain people develop very negative emotions towards like schooling, towards learning, and towards having any self-confidence. Like like my brother-in-law, right? I love this guy. Like um how do I say this? He's how do I say this? He's like the handyman, so he's like very knowledgeable about everything. So from fixing cars to replacing brakes to fixing bikes to electricity work to construction to this to that. This dude's done it all. But his circumstances were when he was 16 or 15, he knocked up his girlfriend. So he had to quit high school from the very beginning and he had to go into the workforce. Because of that, right, he has all of these skills, but there's always this disconnect with him associating himself as a professional. And I'm like, now he makes props, right? He makes props for like parties. So some of these props involve like you soldering, electricity work, sketching, building, planning, building the construction work. And right, he still does everything else, working with motorcycles, working with cars, working with bicycles. Like this dude's full balls to the wall, deep in work all the time. And kills me to see him put himself down. It's like, because the way I see it, right, we're in a culture war, and it is right now, as it is right now. Um, it's very lacking in terms of whatever lacking there is in male culture, and I don't know. Seeing him, it's not just him. It's I see it repeated so often in so many other places that I'm like, wow, this is a real big issue where there is no self confidence in the craft that men do. And like a lot of this is very anecdotal, so I'll just leave it at that. But like I've seen this in people who are in construction, people who are in union work, people who are in work that like involves your hands. And to see the lack of self confidence in some of these people really kills me because it's just like I'm like I look at them and I'm like, do you realize who's running our country? You're fucking having an internal squabble over this while the motherfuckers who are running our country have insecurities that outweigh yours by like 100-fold because those people would actually look at you and realize that you're the actual valuable asset. And, you know, again, with how people get picked into these positions of power goes beyond me. But again, it's a I don't know. I believe that people tend to get chosen because of the behaviors that they display and because of the certain attitudes that they do. It's very like you get picked for positions of power because whoever picked you for that position is well aware of what kind of person you are. So I don't know. But back to me. Being avoidant and right, so in being avoidant and me being secretive with me not telling these people that like, hey, this is taking me a really long time because I'm taking my time to learn this stuff. But just because I didn't want to say that and because I wanted to avoid whatever imaginary conflict I had in myself, um, I don't know. I just, I'm not saying it led to problems. I'm just saying, like, I see that as a problem because, like, what the fuck is the need for me to be secretive about this, right? Like, but I don't know. It's just these weird, like, things that, like, I trap myself in. But I'd imagine that there are a lot of people who, like, mentally trap themselves into these situations. And, I don't, I don't know. We're just like that. And I think it's done purposefully because to some degree, there were decisions that were made that ultimately led to where we're at now in terms of, I don't know, like, I don't want to say this, but I don't want to make it seem like, ooh, like if I hated my dad, I wouldn't like Donald Trump. I actually like Donald Trump. Um, I it comes with that thing of I came to the conclusion that a lot of people who hate Donald Trump have dad issues in one way or another, and it's because you've internalized that there are these certain behaviors that you associate with him, and you're just like, oh, right. So Hillary Clinton, oh, she's like my grandma. I couldn't see my grandma doing that. people are like, oh, F Donald Trump. He's just like my dad who left me. I could see that totally working out in a lot of cases, but when you incorporate various compounding factors, right? Compounding factors with the media, the narrative, the mockingbird nature of like repeating one thing, it constantly repeats over and over in the paradigm. It becomes a very deeply rooted thing, and you can rationalize it in so many other ways that it's just like language that we start playing out. Book details that the syndrome develops in childhood. I think I mentioned that. Um, right. So during this whole thing, because they use three different males in the beginning of the book, I haven't read all of it. It sounds like I'm, whoa, man, this is well versed. No, I haven't even read the whole book yet. I'm still kind of going through it. But it reminds me of another book that I read called Silent, and Silent was about a book about introverts and how introverts kind of, I would say it's like the first book that truly kind of touches on the subject that you can be heavily introverted, but you also have aspects of extrovert, and it further develops the topic and the discussion about introverts, extroverts, and people's behaviors and how they behave and blah blah blah. But again, that's one aspect of the thing. I read that book back in like 2013, 2014. No, I don't know. Either way, um, sex behaviors it deems unnecessary for acceptance, right? Because kids find it's always a form of an abandonment because it's like, oh, I don't want to be left behind. It reminds me of a memory as a kid where I know George Lopez said this as a joke, but I actually did this as a kid, where I'm in the restroom and my family's leaving, and they're like, "We're gonna leave without you." And I'm in the restroom like, "No, don't leave without me." Oh fuck, dude. Like that story to me is very meaningful because like, oh, I lived that. Like that was me. That I was that kid. So, um, very loose one, but there are these things that you internalize and subconsciously do because you're seeking that form of acceptance. And I guess an example of something that I did recently was because I was so unsure of myself in my art, I was constantly sharing it. And I could see how that would come off to people as like, "Oh, I'm gloating about my art." But in reality, I'm really self I'm really conscious about this. Like, I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad. Like, I was looking for input, but I wasn't saying that. And because I wasn't saying that, I guess it came off a way where people were assuming that I was kind of gloating. But I'm like, dude, I'm like learning this. And again, my problem started because I decided to be secretive about like me learning all this stuff. Cause right, so I decided to learn how to draw at the beginning of the pandemic, right around the time that I also started like uh fasting, working out, and doing all this other shit. Um, Working out, right? I developed good confidence in all the other things, but drawing, not so much. And that was because I wasn't getting any very constructive feedback, or at least I wasn't looking for it in the right places. And anywhere immediately that I was kind of engaging with, um, I don't know. I was looking for acceptance. I had, like, right now, I'm really realizing that not very healthy. So, right, these are internal things that, because I didn't communicate this at the beginning, nobody knew. And because nobody knew, I'm sharing all my art, and they think that I'm like, whatever. I don't know. I don't know how I came across. These are assumptions that I'm making, right? These are things that I'm like, no. So I don't want to say that that's what they thought. I'm just saying, like, I could see how it would come across like that, and when in reality, it's just me being insecure, trying to seek some form of acceptance through sharing my bits and pieces of artwork. Um, and it also gets hella fucked up because all right. So one thing I have noticed with my art is I'm a very big perfectionist. Like I like my line work looking right. I like my colors looking right. Um, I don't know if you could tell by Vimy. Bimmy took me, I want to say, a few hours to do, and the amount of iterations that I just ran through my head that I tried drawing, the like, I realized I have problems with the amount of thinking that I do for some of this stuff because I'm trying to make it look perfect. I don't know why. It's just something that I'm trying to do. But they're in the book, um, No More Mr. Nice Guy. Um, nice guys kind of want to look perfect, and because they constantly want to look perfect, uh, the book details that some of the negative traits are because these nice guys are always bottling stuff up. Like it will, like these will come out as outbursts of anger and like because they're not properly communicating themselves. Um, Very interesting stuff. The initial example of the books, I already talked about that. And so, right, because I'm not very good at communicating in terms of like, I didn't want to explain myself because I didn't want to say to people like, hey, I still need to learn how to use the software. I still need to learn how to like, how to color. I still need to learn how to do all this stuff in order for me to like facilitate the needs of the group. I didn't tell him that because I wanted to I wanted to be perceived as good as somebody who knows what they're doing, but it's just like I don't know. You could see how that leads to problems because I couldn't explain myself because I decided not to. Um, you know what I mean? Like these are just compounding factors that a nice guy would put themselves in, and they're always trying to fix. There's in situations where they're just trying to fix shit, like trying to fix life, they're trying to fix the situations that they put themselves in. And in 2019, when I was very complacent with my life, being injured, being fat, and like there was a lot of that. There was a lot of people pleasing. There was a lot of like I had gotten to a very low point, and I realized that like it stopped being about how I failed people, and I started realizing is I failed myself. 2019 was 3 years ago. So if I'm 29, yeah, I was 27, 6. Yeah, because 26 is when I got injured. By 27, I had lost most of my friends. It was like I lost most of my friends because I just dropped out of the earth. Like I just disappeared like a blimp because politically, with what happened at school, with what happened with my relationships, but a lot of it was me. I didn't communicate. I didn't. I didn't take a stand, and I didn't, by a large part, respect myself. And it's been a very learning and telling journey, um, at least for myself. Just because it's like, damn, like, and it's given me bigger insight on the culture war because, at first, like, if you don't, I don't know about anybody else, but because I'm internalizing all these things from this perspective, I can now see how people, by and large, and our culture is the way it is, and it's because of these very small factors in our lives that we live through as children, and they get compounded as we progress forward. And there's so much to it, so you can't just right. It's the people you meet at school, but so what do? You just lock yourself away? Like no, like you still need to learn how to communicate with other people and all this other shit. But like you do that meaningfully when you can't even speak to your parents and da 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 da. Right? Like we can spin ourselves into circles, but a lot of it comes down to why is it the way it is, and eventually throughout this long string of thought process, I came to the conclusion it's that there are special interests or groups of people who have gotten together and realized that they have a goal or a vision for everyone else to follow because I don't know, you gotta I look at it from a perspective of because I like to read a lot of manga and I like to read manga that relates to kingdoms, like older type stuff. And one of the things that's very prevalent is exports and imports. Like, how is the kingdom making income? Like, what are they exporting? What are they selling? How are the people living? Right? Like, you have to maintain food, water, supplies. Right? Like, there are demands that a population requires, and how that works in tandem with whoever's leading, very important. I'm looking at it from that perspective. I understand that there are the people that understand that. There are special interest groups that know that. Naburo, no, what is his name? He's not seen as a very good man in Japan, because one of his war tactics was, uh he would not take your food. If he was invading your side of Japan, he was burning your crops. He was not. He did not want to pillage you. Like, he knew that certain people would value certain things first, right? So when he would invade a village or invade a kingdom or invade a different faction of Japan, he would set fire to their crops because he knew that the soldiers of that area would try to turn off the fire because the crop was very important. Um, Nabunaga, something like that. I don't know. Very ruthless man. So I look at it at that. There are special interest groups that understand the needs of society and understand the needs of these communities, and to some degree know that they have facets of their creation that can tweak individuals, what they learn at school, what they're exposed to. In this case, Mike, I don't know if I want to say it like that, but something that I have written about in my journal is about how I largely believe that towards the turn from 65 to the 70s, we saw that culture musically started leaning a different way. And John Seagram, I think that's his name, he has a book about the music industry. I think I have another video where I flash the book on the screen, and in that book he talks about the guy who signed Elvis, the guy who gave the contract to Elvis. His goal was to get black blues music or the jive and music and sell it to a white audience. But the way he saw it was, well, I need a white face to sell this black music to white people. Um, Kind of funny because Eminem also has a verse where he talks about how like he feels like Elvis, where it's the same thing. Elvis grew up in a black neighborhood, and that's why he liked black music, which was why he was the perfect candidate to be the white face to sell black music, which is kind of the thing with Marshall and Eminem, where he was that white kid who grew up in that rough neighborhood, who also grew up in that scene of battle rap, and he was the perfect candidate to sell rap music at the time to a white audience. Um, because you know what I mean. Like NSYNC didn't go that far. NSYNC was far more pop. NSYNC and Backstreet Boys were far more popular in Europe. Um, no, no. I'm like already like I have the urge to sing some of those NSYNC songs. No, don't do it. I already feel rather embarrassed that I was very forthcoming with some of these issues that I have. But again, it comes with the process of taking initiative in wanting to change my circumstances. No, why did I say that? Uh, yeah, I think I'll leave that as that. I might make a video later. It's only 6:30, so buenos dias, good morning. This was another episode with Ramirez, but this was more of a vlog talking about some of my internal emotional issues, and you know what I mean. I want to get better. I don't know about anybody else, but like I want to end these cycles they're not conducive to a healthy life. Like, I don't know about anybody else, but I want to be happy at the end of all this. Um, I do not want to pass down any generational bullshit to the kids, because that shit has to end with me.